President-elect Nana Akufo has pledged his government's commitment to partner with the private sector to fulfill his One District, One Dam project.
The private sector is to lead in the development of the national economy. PEF and its members are key constituents in any discussion on Ghana's future.
The president-elect also officially confirmed Alan Kyerematen as his Minister of Trade and Industry.
I came here with Alan Kyerematen because he's the man who is going to be the Minister for Industry and Trade.
So what does this mean to the growth of Ghana's economy, as well as the NPP's promise of one district, one factory plus one district, one dam? We'll be getting some responses shortly from some economic gurus right here, right now on today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Now, President-elect Nana Akufo says the famous one district, one factory promise made during the election will be fulfilled in partnership with the private sector. Nana says his government is committed to creating a competitive economy that will produce sustainable growth. Now, let's listen to the president-elect when he attended the annual meeting of the Private Enterprise Federation in Accra.
The NPP will restore and maintain macroeconomic stability through the pursuit of sound policies on the basis of an enhanced institutional framework. Macroeconomic stability is built around three pillars: monetary discipline, fiscal discipline, and financial stability. To reinforce monetary discipline, the Bank of Ghana Act 2000 Act 612 established the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, to guide the implementation of monetary policy. The other two pillars, fiscal discipline and financial stability, have no such institutional anchors. Fiscal indiscipline has been the bane of economic management in the country. To address this, the IMF recently insisted on the passage of a Public Financial Management Act. However, the law as enacted is woefully inadequate because it lacks the key elements that will protect the public purse from abuse. Fiscal policy implementation as it stands now lacks three basic elements: the absence of a transparent institutional arrangement for providing quality fiscal information to the public, the absence of a mechanism for ensuring accountability in implementing optimal fiscal policies to guarantee the stability of the system, and the absence of an institution to ensure the credibility of fiscal projections provided by the government. To address the problem of the current high public debt levels and the country's high risk of debt distress, our government will adopt and implement rules to anchor fiscal policy implementation. For example, there will be specific targets for the reduction of government borrowing and debt. We intend to enact a fiscal responsibility law to bring comprehensiveness, accountability, transparency, and stability to the entire budgetary process. Under this law, a fiscal council would be established to set up medium-term fiscal policy and monitor compliance. In addition, to restore overall macroeconomic stability, we will, one, undertake financial sector reform to deepen financial markets, promote financial inclusion, enhance the supervision and regulation of the financial institutions, and move the country's payment systems towards an electronic payment system. Secondly, implement a strategy aimed at repositioning the country as an international financial services center within the region to create jobs. Thirdly, formalize the economy through the establishment of a national database. The National Identification System as the primary identifier, with linkages to the databases of institutions such as the police, National Health Insurance Scheme, Passport Office, Immigration, Courts, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Driver and Licensing Authority. The process of giving our country a national identification system began in President Akufo's time. 8 years later, nothing has been done about it. And it is our intention that within the very first year of our mandate, that we intend to complete the process of national identification in Ghana. Fourthly, stabilize the currency exchange rate for the long term through prudent and disciplined macroeconomic management, an increase in domestic production, and increase in exports. Ladies and gentlemen, I preach to the converted when I state that our economy has been choked by the imposition of far too many taxes. This has increased the burden on the private sector and has become a disincentive for investment and production. To address these challenges, the new administration will shift the focus of economic policy away from taxation to production by removing what the Vice President-elect, Dr. Bawumia, famously terms the nuisance taxes. I believe some of them were those that were outlined by the Chief Executive in his compelling presentation. The ensuing increase in production and economic growth arising from a streamlining as well as the elimination and reduction of some of these taxes will more than compensate for any temporary revenue shortfall.
Let's do some analysis now. We'll bring you the part of the private sector, their response to Nana Addo's charges or the task Nana Addo is giving to them. We'll get responses from them. But right now, let's speak with an economic lecturer with the economics department at the University of Ghana, Dr. Eric Osei-Sibe. Good evening to you. Many thanks for your time.
Good evening, Aisha.
Now, the president-elect wants to partner the private sector in achieving his one district, one factory, as well as one district, one dam promise. Interestingly, the private sector has accepted this challenge. Tell me how feasible and easy this is going to be.
Well, I think Nana has taken a step towards achieving this goal because there was no way government alone could implement this project, implement it successfully. We have seen situations in the past where government has directly gotten involved in creating or establishing enterprises, state-owned enterprises that have collapsed and thrown the economy out of gear. And so for such projects, I mean, some of us have said that it wasn't going to work if the private sector was not involved, because you need the private sector to come in with the expertise, the know-how, the technical know-how, to be able to find a much more efficient way of running such projects, devoid of government interference, political, I mean, all those things, patronage and all that. You need to get it away from such things. You also need to be able to get access to finance, which is critical. You know, the precarious situation that the country's financial situation is in now. There was no way government could get all the funds to acquiring land, acquiring the machineries, hiring people, and all that. That would definitely be difficult. And so for Nana to partner with the private sector, I think it's a good thing. It's give meaning to the PPP, the public-private partnership idea, so that what government would then concentrate on is making sure that it actually creates industrial enclave in each of these industries and provide the needed support, creating them the necessary or conducive environment, business-friendly environment for such private sector to bring in their money, making sure that there's access to utilities and is provided at much lower cost. You're granting them tax-free for a certain period to be able to operate, and all the support that is needed. Once those things are put in place, the private sector will feel much more comfortable to bring its capital and then also to bring its expertise, which is very important, and managerial skills to be able to manage this in a more profit-oriented basis other than a public, or state-oriented base. For me, I think it's a good step that the government has taken.
But, Doc, there are those who feel this cannot be achieved in the first term of the Akufo led government because of the business environment at the moment. How stable is the environment now in terms of business? And is it something that can be turned around quickly to be able to achieve all of these?
Well, I mean, time, of course, is of essence in this, but it is not very important. What is important is, for me, is putting together the right mechanism, modalities, structures in place so that at any time when it takes off, it's not going to hit a snag. And so much as the economy, for me, is now not doing too well, the priority for government should be how to stabilize the economy and making sure that it puts in place all the legal, regulatory framework that is necessary to set up such businesses. So it has to move, but move much more gradually and in phases. There's no point for us to rush through it and for it to hit a snag or for it to fail. It will definitely inure to the benefit of everyone if the system is very well thought through and taking our time to make sure that by the time each of these industries are set up, I don't think all of them are going to set up at the goal. I'm sure that it will depend on which areas attract finance or attract interest first. And so I don't think it's going to be a concurrent big push where all the industry, all the districts will start at the goal. I'm sure it's going to be rolled out in phases, depending on which district is ready, which one has investor interest, which one has land, and all that put together. So for me, the time is not too important than the mechanism that will be put in place to ensure that once it's taken off, it's really going to make an impact on the society.
Well, quickly, let me find out from you, because interestingly, the president-elect mentioned Alan Chermantain as his Minister for Trade and Industry if he assumes power on January 8, from January 8 going. Let me ask you, what does this mean to the private sector?
Well, I think it means a lot because Alan has a stint in both. He has been a private sector practitioner, and he has also been in government. He has been with the financial institutions. So his expertise is almost all-rounded. It's cut across. He knows the supply side. He knows the demand side of it, how to get access to finance. And he also has, from the government perspective, political side of it. So I think, for now, he's the right person for this position, and he'll be able to bridge the gap between the private sector and the public sector very well. And for me, I think it's a good choice for this position.
And looking at achieving some of the promises that the MPP has made, building a solid economy, what does he bring on board? What would he be doing to help achieve, or what are your expectations of him to be able to achieve some of these promises?
Well, I want to believe that the genesis of this whole promise or proposal actually started with him. And so he knows exactly what they wanted to do. And with his caliber, I mean, being with the ADB, being with the business or the private sector, and being in government as a former trade minister, he has already had an experience with that. And for his focus of being more of capitalist in nature, he stands tall in terms of being able to attract the needed investment from foreign partners and from institutional investors and all that. So, and I believe that the main accelerator for this government will be the private sector, will be the engine of growth. And so you need somebody with that kind of interest, the interest of making sure that private sector has access to land, private sector has access to credit, private sector has access to the skills that is needed. Because this is very important to be able to drive the sector forward. And that goodwill that the new government comes with, and maybe Alan Chamate also comes with, will help to even attract much more FDI into many of these sectors. And I believe sometimes, in most cases, the problem that we have had is the implementation and the execution of such wonderful projects. If the government takes its time and brings people on board and actually make sure that all loopholes, graft, corruption, and all things are actually closed, I'm sure that this thing will be a huge success for the country. I'm quite certain about that.
Is a lecturer at the Economics Department of the University of Ghana. Joining us on the other phone line is Nana Osei-Bonsu, who is the president of the Private Enterprise Federation. Good evening to you. We appreciate your time on today's big story.
Good evening, ma'am, but you don't want my boss to tell me I'm not the president of PEF. I'm just the CEO of PEF.
Right, so CEO of PEF.
Yeah.
We're unable to get you on Skype. We plan to do that.
Unfortunately, I don't know what's happening.
But first of all, how do you take the news of Alan Chermante being the next Minister for Trade and Industries, and what does this mean to you?
You heard after the announcement the euphoria and the applause, enthusiasm by the business community. So we welcome this with the greatest applause, in the sense that he's been there before. He knows the ropes. He knows the avenues. He has the experience. He has the exposure. He has the competency. So this is the best way to go.
Right. So let's then look at the private sector and you accepting the challenge that Nana Addo has thrown to you, that you will partner him to achieve his one factory, one district, one factory project, one district, one dam project. How are you going to achieve this, or how are you going to help support Nana Addo achieve this?
You know, if you are listening to the whole exercise that evening, I had spoken before the president-elect, and we have said that we have established district business coalitions, an aggregation of business players in the entire community of each district. And we did a pilot in 3 areas, Techiman, Ejura, and Mampong.
Right.
And the essence of the DBC, the District Business Coalitions, is put together all businesses so they can take advantage of opportunities within the district, so they can explore and do things together. Now here comes the president-elect. He said, okay, I'm going to now create factory in each district. So assuming District A, all the business players in the community have come together, Nana is offering the opportunity. It's either they provide the financing, the technical skills, and all the things that are needed to establish it, and the government is also going to possibly incentivize them that if you do A, we give you B. If you do C, we give you D. That is a partnership of public sector and private sector. So the DBCs that we have established are going to be vehicles to partner the presidency in establishing the one factory, one district, one factory per district. The good part is, unlike previous avenues or previous government initiatives, this is going to be private sector driven. It's not going to be public sector that we're going to establish a factory, sugar factory here, and government is going to guarantee this 5 million or 10 million, and go, no. Private sector does not want government to do that. Private sector wants government to create a enabling environment and say, okay, if I give you 5 cents, you're going to add 15 cents. A partnership work can create the opportunity, which can then result in job creation. Look, let me give you a scenario of public sector, private sector job creation. Public sector composition of jobs in Ghana is 6.2. The private sector, formal sector, is 6.8. That's more than the public sector.
That's interesting.
The informal sector is 86.3. So the government is looking at the avenue of using private sector to create jobs.
Right.
And that can happen only when the private sector is engendered to have the capacity to do what needs to be done.
Let's look at the business environment now vis-a-vis what we want to achieve. Is it, there are people who are concerned that the environment is not at its best now, so that's going to be a tough challenge or a tough task
yes,
to
indeed,
perform.
I agree with you. I agree with you. The challenge is going to be enormous, but we are up to the task. You see, private sector thrives on confidence. The fact that there's opportunity tomorrow, the fact that somebody is going to create the enabling environment to create the resources, the infrastructure for me to do. That's what private sector lives best. Then we go and strategize and say, okay, when government does A, I can do B. But when government closes the door and you don't know your way around, that's when private sector sits back and says, well, I don't know my way around. I'm not going to borrow. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm going to sit tight until I see my way clear. Confidence is predictability. The fact that government says we're going to go A, and the president-elect says, I'm going to let you private sector fill the void. I'm going to create opportunity for you to do what you can do best. So we could not ask for better things than what he said.
So in the event that we don't have one district, one factory, can we come at you instead of going to Nana Addo, who made the promise?
If the enabling environment is created, yes, indeed, you don't come after me because you have to have the potential and the returns. You have to have the risking mechanisms in place. And we will government elect the president-elect and his government to create a new environment. Believe me, in 2 years, as the president said, if these are provided infrastructure, resource mobilization,
right,
then the private sector cannot fail.
Many thanks to Nana Osebun. So that's all time will allow us. We appreciate your time on today's big story. We've been talking about President-elect Nana Addo Akufo, who has pledged that his government's commitment to achieve or put up one factory in every district and one dam in one district will be partnered by the private sector. We've just had the private sector representatives who are also pledging their support to help government to achieve this promise. We'll be watching and monitoring and we'll be updating on all the things that happen. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching.